Iran spent decades wielding the Strait of Hormuz like a loaded gun pointed at the world economy. 20 million barrels of oil flow through that narrow waterway every day. One wrong move from Tehran and global markets would hemorrhage. The Revolutionary Guards knew it. The Gulf states lived in fear of it, and Iran used that fear like a master manipulator. But something just changed everything. Turkey made a series of moves so calculated, so devastating, that Iran's ultimate weapon became worthless overnight. And the Islamic Republic is now staring at a nightmare scenario they never saw coming. Here's what happened that has Tehran in full panic mode. While Iran was busy threatening to close the strait and launching drone swarms at civilian targets, Turkey quietly began flooding the Gulf with the most advanced weapon systems on the planet. We're talking about Akinci hunter-killer drones, Korkut air defense systems, and cutting-edge laser weapons that can incinerate targets with focused beams of light. The numbers tell the story. Saudi Arabia was spending millions on Patriot interceptors to stop Iranian drones that cost a few $1,000s each. One Patriot missile costs more than an entire Iranian Shahed drone swarm. Tehran was bleeding Saudi Arabia's defense budget dry through sheer mathematical warfare. But then Riyadh signed a historic deal with Turkey's Aselsan for Korkut anti-drone systems that achieve target lock in milliseconds and shred aerial targets with programmable airburst munitions. The United Arab Emirates took it even further. In May 2025, they finalized agreements with Baykar Technologies to integrate Al-Tariq precision-guided bombs onto their Akinci drone fleet. These aren't defensive systems. These are precision killing machines designed to strike Iranian targets from hundreds of kilometers away, well beyond the reach of Tehran's air defenses. And here's where it gets personal. On April 1st, 2025, the UAE put these systems to the test. 3 separate Akinci drones launched devastating strikes deep into Iranian territory, hitting military installations on Qeshm Island and Lavan Island in consecutive waves. Iran was so rattled they filed formal complaints with the UN Security Council. The UAE's response? They simply stated they reserved the right to legitimate self-defense under international law. Think about what just happened there. For the first time in modern history, a Gulf state reached across the water and struck Iran in its own backyard with precision and impunity. The psychological impact was massive. Iran's aura of regional dominance cracked wide open. But Turkey's masterstroke goes far beyond weapons sales. While Iran was playing the straight closure card, thinking they held the ultimate leverage, Ankara was quietly building something that would make that leverage completely irrelevant: the Iraq Development Road Project. $24 billion invested in a massive integrated road and railway network that connects Gulf oil directly to European markets through Turkish territory. Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia no longer need to send their oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. They can bypass Iran entirely through Iraqi territory and reach Mediterranean ports via Turkey. The very geographical advantage Iran spent decades exploiting just got permanently transferred to Ankara. Iran closed the strait and destroyed their own strategic importance in the process. The financial numbers reveal the scope of this transformation. Non-oil trade between Turkey and the UAE alone exceeded $45 billion in 2024, shattering all previous records. Gulf capital, terrified of Iran's increasingly aggressive behavior, is flooding into Istanbul's safe financial harbors. Meanwhile, Iran's proxy militias throughout Iraq and Syria are losing popular support and logistical sustainability. Consider the broader implications here. Iran's entire regional strategy was built on 2 pillars: geographic leverage through the Strait of Hormuz and proxy warfare through militia networks. Turkey just systematically demolished both pillars while positioning itself as the reliable alternative that Gulf states had been desperately seeking. Every Iranian drone swarm will now face artificial intelligence-supported tracking radars and programmable smart munitions that cost virtually nothing per engagement. Every Iranian ballistic missile launch will be met with layered defense systems stretching from Kuwait to Saudi Arabia. Every Iranian proxy attack will be answered by Akinci drones capable of striking back with surgical precision. The Revolutionary Guards built their entire coercive apparatus on cheap asymmetric warfare, overwhelm expensive Western defense systems with numerical saturation, bleed enemy budgets through cost-inefficient intercepts, create psychological pressure through persistent low-level attacks. Turkey's defense systems just made that entire strategy obsolete. Iran's leadership must be asking themselves how they miscalculated so catastrophically. They thought closing the strait would bring the world to its knees. Instead, they accelerated their own strategic irrelevance. They thought drone swarms would terrorize the Gulf into submission. Instead, they triggered a defensive revolution that turned every Gulf state into a potential threat to Iranian territory. Here's the question that will determine everything moving forward. Does Iran, watching its straight leverage evaporate and its proxy networks crumble, launch one final desperate offensive using whatever regional assets it has left? Or do the Turkish weapon systems now deployed across the Gulf create such overwhelming deterrence that Tehran accepts its new reality as a contained regional power slowly suffocating under economic pressure? Because one thing is absolutely certain, the Iran that could hold the global economy hostage through geographic blackmail no longer exists.